Imagine this. The chaos around you is rising. Deadlines close in. People interrupt your peace. Unexpected events slam into your routine like a violent storm. And yet, you do not flinch. You do not collapse. You do not curse the skies or the people or the moment. Instead, you stand rooted, your breath steady, your gaze unshaken, because you've cultivated one habit so deeply, so fiercely, that no one and nothing, not the insult, not the crisis, not the failure, can break your grip on yourself. That habit is self-control. Not the kind that merely resists desert or ignores distractions. No, this is something older, deeper, more disciplined. This is the habit of training your mind to be sovereign, not ruled by impulse, not whipped by fear, not owned by praise or crushed by rejection. The Stoics knew this well. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And that's what this habit gives you. Freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the deeper kind. The freedom from being manipulated, provoked, or destroyed by forces outside of you. Most people walk through life as if they're puppets, pulled by the strings of circumstance. One unkind comment sends them spiraling. One mistake ruins their whole day. One rejection and they question their worth. This is not freedom. This is slavery of the mind. But there is another path. A path walked by warriors of inner discipline. A path not defined by reacting to life, but responding to it, consciously, wisely, with purpose. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the most powerful empire on earth, wrote to himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He did not seek to control the world. He sought to control his response to it. Because once you master your response, no one can use the world to control you. But let's be clear. Self-control is not about becoming emotionless. It's not about suppressing what you feel or pretending not to care. Stoicism never taught that. It taught awareness. Awareness of your impulses, your thoughts, your emotions. And then mastery. Mastery over what you choose to do next. Anger rises. You don't deny it. You observe it. You ask, what is this flame trying to tell me? Is this anger rooted in truth or pride? Then you respond. Not lash out, not explode, respond. Fear grips you. You don't shame yourself. You study it. You ask, what am I clinging to? What imagined future is terrifying me? And you breathe. You return to the present. You ground yourself in what you can control. Self-control is not repression. It is reflection followed by right action. But this habit, this single habit, is rare because it takes more than willpower. It takes philosophy. It takes the decision to orient your entire life around one principle. My peace is my responsibility. And that begins with mastering what the Stoics called the ruling faculty. Your mind, your reason, your inner governor. You are not your emotions. You are not your impulses. You are the one who decides what to do with them. And that decision, whether to lash out or stay calm, to indulge or refrain, to speak or stay silent, is the pivot point on which everything rests. Relationships, reputations, inner freedom. The Stoics taught that every disturbance in the soul comes not from the thing itself, but from our judgment of it. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." How often is this true in your own life? How often have you assumed offense where there was none? How often has your mind spun a simple delay into a disaster? And more importantly, how much energy have you handed over to these things? Because that's what lack of self-control does. It leaks your power. It hands over your agency to anyone who knows how to provoke you. A rude driver cuts you off, and suddenly they own your mood. A partner criticizes you unfairly, and now your mind is replaying the moment over and over, ruining your entire evening. But what if you had the discipline to pause, to notice the rising anger, not to deny it, but to hold it like a stone in your hand, to examine it, to decide, this is not worth my energy, and then let it go. That's not weakness. That's strength, because anyone can explode, anyone can react. But to hold your ground internally, that's rare. That's trained. That's Stoic. This is the path of the philosopher, not of words, but of life, not of memorizing quotes, but of living them every day in the arena of your own reactions. It's easy to appear calm when life is smooth, but true power is revealed when life tests you, and it always will. The question is, who are you when things fall apart? Self-control is the foundation of composure, and composure is the expression of freedom. It is the ability to move through fire without catching flame, to walk through insults, uncertainty, disappointment, and remain unmoved in your core. Not cold, not numb, just centered, anchored. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, if someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth by which no one was ever truly harmed. That is the self-control of a ruler, someone who can take correction without ego, who can change without collapse, who knows that peace is more important than being right. Most people chase control over everything but themselves. They try to manage what others think. They try to change what can't be changed. They exhaust themselves trying to win arguments, fix the uncontrollable, and anticipate every possible outcome. But the Stoic reverses this. They give up control over others, and they reclaim control over themselves. It's not easy, but nothing worth becoming ever is. You have to train it like a muscle, day by day, moment by moment. You will fail. You will overreact. You will fall into old habits. That's expected. The Stoic is not perfect, but he is persistent. Because each time you catch yourself about to react, each time you breathe, step back, and choose your response, you reinforce the habit. You carve a deeper groove in the mind. You become more free. And slowly, the world loses its grip on you. The chaos no longer stirs your depths. The insults land, but don't stay. The fears arise, but don't drown you. You have built an inner citadel. That inner citadel, the fortress of your mind, is not built in grand moments of silence or solitude, but in the small, invisible choices no one sees. Every time you resist the urge to retaliate, every time you remain calm when it would be easier to explode, every time you choose to wait instead of react, you lay another stone. This is not passivity. This is power. Power over the one thing that truly belongs to you, your mind. As Epictetus said, keep your attention focused entirely on what is truly your own, and refrain from judging anything else. That's where self-control begins, by knowing what is yours to govern, not the opinions of others, not their behavior, not the outcome of events, only your choices. And this is where most people fall into suffering. They try to control the uncontrollable and then despair when it slips through their fingers. But the Stoic does the opposite. He narrows his focus. He sharpens it like a blade. He asks only one question: what is within my power right now? And then he acts on that. Because self-control is not passive endurance. It is active participation in your own mind. It is choosing your direction again and again, even when the world pulls you sideways, even when anger burns or fear tightens your chest or insecurity whispers that you're not enough. You remain. And that stillness becomes magnetic, not because it's loud, but because it's rooted. People around you will notice, even if they can't name it. There's a depth to a person who cannot be moved by every gust of emotion. There's a quiet gravity in someone who listens more than they speak, who chooses their words carefully, who does not rise to every provocation. It's rare, and anything rare becomes powerful. Now understand this clearly. Self-control does not mean a lack of emotion. The Stoics were human. They grieved, they feared, they loved, but they never let these feelings dictate their actions without examination. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." And adversity is where this habit, the habit of self-command, is tested. Anyone can be calm when life cooperates, but when the storm arrives and the world pushes against your mind, that's when your training reveals itself. What do you do when you're misunderstood, when you're disrespected, when you fail in public, when you're ridiculed, or when something dear to you is taken away? The average person lashes out. They demand vengeance, sympathy, or escape. But the Stoic pauses, not to suppress, but to see clearly, to remember, I am not what happens to me. I am what I choose to become in response to it. This is the most radical form of personal power, the ability to remain composed, kind, and aligned with your principles in the face of pain. Because when you control your response, you control your future. Every decision you make in anger is a chain you wear tomorrow. Every reaction made without reflection is a step away from your higher self. But every time you pause, that sacred pause, you reclaim your life. You might think that reacting gives you strength, but it doesn't. It gives your strength away. Every emotional outburst, every moment of uncontrolled panic or resentment, these don't punish your enemies, they punish you. They drain your energy. They fog your mind. They rob you of clarity. The Stoics were not trying to be saints. They were trying to be sovereign. That is the key difference. This isn't about moral perfection. It's about functional freedom. The kind of freedom that lets you sleep peacefully because you weren't owned by anything outside yourself today. That kind of peace doesn't come from luck. It comes from self-mastery. And mastery begins with awareness. Start there. Catch yourself in the act, when your mind wants to erupt, when your tongue wants to snap, when your hands want to retaliate. Notice it. Step back from it. Say to yourself, I am not this feeling. I am the one who decides what to do with it. and then act, not from the storm, but from the I within it. Over time, you'll notice a shift. Fewer regrets, fewer apologies, fewer hours lost to mental noise and emotional replays. You'll become lighter, more focused, not because life is easier, but because you've stopped handing your peace to people who didn't earn it. There is a nobility in this path, a quiet nobility. It won't be applauded. It won't be trending. It won't get you loud praise, but it will build a kind of inner strength that is untouchable. And when others rage, you will stay still. When others run, you will walk forward. When others collapse, you will rise. Because you've done the work, not once, but daily. Every morning, you return to your practice. Before the world speaks, you speak to yourself. What do I control today? What can I govern inside me, no matter what comes from outside? And with that question, you armor your mind. You prepare your spirit. Because no one wakes up disciplined. Discipline is not a personality trait. It's a ritual, a decision, a vow you make again and again. You vow not to be ruled by mood, not to be a puppet of pleasure or a slave to offense. You vow to be steady. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it. That is self-control. That is strength. Not the kind that flexes in front of others, the kind that holds firm in solitude. And here's the most beautiful truth about this habit. It's available to anyone. You don't need wealth. You don't need perfect circumstances. You don't need a quiet life. You only need the courage to start, the courage to watch yourself, honestly, humbly, and to shape that self with care. Because if you don't do that, someone else will. The world is always trying to shape you. Advertisers, critics, strangers, lovers, enemies. They're all trying to pull your attention, to sway your emotions, to occupy your mind. And unless you claim ownership of your inner world, you will live your life as a reaction to theirs. But the moment you reclaim that space, the moment you begin to train yourself to choose, your life changes. Not all at once, but in powerful, irreversible ways. You no longer need to control people. You control your boundaries. You no longer need everyone to understand you. You understand yourself. You no longer need to win every argument. You know what truly matters. And in that detachment, not from life, but from unexamined reaction, you rise. You become like the archer, who in the chaos of the battlefield still finds the target. You don't shoot at every sound. You aim with precision. Because you've trained. Because you've chosen. Because you know now, if you master this one habit, no one can control you. But don't confuse mastery with finality. There is no final moment where you have conquered all your impulses and secured eternal calm. Even the great Stoics faltered. Even Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome and the most powerful man on earth, wrote pages and pages of reminders to himself. Don't be overheard complaining, not even to yourself. That was not arrogance speaking. That was discipline sharpening itself daily. Because even when you have walked this path for years, the mind will still tremble at insults, still chase comfort, still react. But the difference is this. Now you notice. Now you respond. Now you rule yourself, even when the emotion arrives uninvited. Self-control is not a wall. It's a gate, a conscious filter between stimulus and response. A sacred pause where you decide, is this worthy of my energy? Is this aligned with who I am becoming? Without that pause, you're at the mercy of the world. With it, you become untouchable, not because nothing affects you, but because you've stopped allowing everything to possess you. And that shift is monumental, because most people don't even realize how reactive they've become. Their anger isn't chosen, it's habitual. Their fear isn't examined, it's automatic. Their decisions aren't deliberate, they're emotional echoes of yesterday's wounds. But the Stoic stops. Not once, but again and again. He slows the wheel. He questions, what belief is behind this feeling? What story am I telling myself? What am I protecting? And from that place of quiet inner clarity, he acts, or refrains. Refraining is a lost art. We live in a time that celebrates expression at all costs. Say it, post it, scream it, vent it. But the Stoic knows that not every thought deserves words. Not every impulse deserves motion. Not every emotion deserves obedience. There is power in restraint. There is power in choosing not to respond, not out of weakness, but from principle. And this is what makes the disciplined mind dangerous in the best way. Because you cannot manipulate a person who does not need your validation. You cannot control someone who is indifferent to your insult. You cannot break a mind that has trained itself to remain sovereign. Imagine what would happen if every person walking this earth took responsibility for their own reactivity. If each one of us decided today to master this one habit, to pause, to reflect, to choose our response wisely, think of how many wars would never be fought, how many relationships would be repaired, how many children would grow up in homes ruled not by chaos, but by calm. The ripple effect of your self-control is vast. It affects how you treat others, how you lead, how you love, how you teach, how you walk through crowds, how you speak to those who cannot help you. It becomes your fingerprint, your invisible reputation. People trust the calm. They gravitate toward the composed, not because they are perfect, but because they are consistent. You do not need to be extraordinary to cultivate this. You need only to choose again and again the quieter path, the slower breath, the deeper reflection. When someone mocks you, you do not retaliate because your peace is more valuable than their opinion. When life delivers pain, you do not collapse because you've trained your mind to endure and remain clear. When opportunity calls, you do not rush in blindly because you know that not every open door is meant to be walked through. This is discernment, and discernment is born from self-control. There is a line in the Enchiridion by Epictetus. If someone does wrong, the harm lies in his doing it, not in your suffering it. That is a hard truth. But it is also the truth that sets you free because it says no matter what they do, you still get to decide what you become in response. And in that decision lies your strength. But self-control does not mean being hard on yourself. It means being honest. It means watching your mind with compassion, but without indulgence. It means catching yourself when you are about to spiral, not with guilt, but with curiosity. Why am I reacting this way? What need is this emotion pointing toward? Is there another path I haven't taken yet? And then you take that path, not because it's easier, but because it's aligned. This is why Stoicism is a lifelong practice, because it doesn't just deal with the outer world, it invites you to map the contours of your inner world, to understand yourself, not just your strengths, but your weaknesses, not just your ambitions, but your attachments, not just your calm, but your cravings. And then from that awareness, to decide daily, deliberately, what kind of person you will be. That is the ultimate rebellion. In a world screaming for attention, you remain still. In a world addicted to outrage, you remain steady. In a world chasing everything, you choose only what truly matters. And in that choice, you reclaim your time, your focus, your presence. Let others be loud, you be clear. Let others chase fame, you build character. Let others seek control, you practice control. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control other people. You can't even control what thoughts arrive in your mind. But you can control your response, and that is more than enough. Because the one who controls their response controls the tone of the conversation, the direction of the decision, the quality of the relationship, and the strength of their soul. This is not a philosophy of avoidance. It is a philosophy of engagement. But engagement on your terms, with your principles, with your values intact. The Stoic does not avoid life. He enters it fully, but without being consumed by it. He is in the world, but not of it. And that balance, that quiet, deliberate, watchful stance is what makes him unbreakable. Not because he never feels pain, but because he never becomes pain. Not because he never feels anger, but because he never becomes anger. Not because he never feels fear, but because he never becomes fear. He remains himself. Steady in chaos, unmoved by praise or blame, rooted in the only thing that truly belongs to him, his own mind. Let this be your goal, not to suppress emotion, but to rule it, not to pretend you're above pain, but to stand inside it with courage and clarity. Because the disciplined mind does not flinch at discomfort. It looks discomfort in the eye and asks, "What are you here to teach me?" And every time you make that choice, every time you pause instead of reacting, breathe instead of bursting, think instead of panicking, you lay another stone in the fortress of your character. Brick by brick, you build something no one can tear down. A self not swayed by storms. A mind no longer tossed by every passing wind. And here's the paradox. The more you master yourself, the less you need to master others. You no longer crave control of the outside world because you've already won the only battle that matters, the one within. You begin to see things as they are, not as your wounded ego imagines them to be. That's why the Stoic isn't cold. He's clear. He can love without attachment, fight without hatred, succeed without arrogance, fail without despair. Because nothing owns him, and because of that, everything becomes lighter. Insults? Air. Loss? Part of the cycle. Failure? Fuel for refinement. The Stoic doesn't deny reality. He digs deeper into it than most dare. He sees the impermanence of things, the fleeting nature of fortune, the illusions of status, and from that vision he extracts strength. Seneca said it best, "He who is brave is free." But courage isn't loud. It's not always the shout in battle. Sometimes it's the quiet decision not to speak when you're angry, not to act when you're tempted, not to chase what doesn't belong to you. It takes more courage to master yourself than it does to conquer a city. That's not metaphor. That's measurable truth. A city can fall in a day, but the conquest of the self, that's a campaign of a lifetime. And most people won't fight it. They'll surrender, not to truth, but to ease, not to peace, but to pleasure, not to purpose, but to popularity. But the Stoic is built for something more. His life is not defined by impulse, but by intention. And so he rewires himself, moment by moment. Instead of saying, "I felt angry, so I yelled," he says, "I noticed anger rise and I chose silence." Instead of, "I was afraid, so I quit," he says, "I felt fear and still moved forward." Instead of, "They disrespected me, so I hit back," he says, "Their disrespect revealed more about them than it could ever diminish me." This is not repression, it's real power. Because real power is not control over others, it's sovereignty over self. You want to be unshakable? Then begin by mastering what shakes you. You want to be powerful? Then examine what makes you feel powerless and build discipline there. Because every place you feel triggered is a place your discipline still needs to grow. Every time you lash out, it's a signal. Every time you chase approval, it's a clue. Every time you run from solitude, it's a message. Your weaknesses are not curses, they are invitations. Invitations to rise. But rising takes work, and not the kind of work the world praises, not the hustle they glorify on screens. No, this is inner labor, silent labor, invisible labor. The work of waking up in the morning and choosing not to believe every thought you think. The work of letting go of the story that you must be offended. The work of reminding yourself, even in pain, this is shaping me, not breaking me. The Stoic does not ask for less adversity. He asks for more resilience. He does not beg the world to be fair. He trains to be stronger than injustice. And so the disciplined mind becomes a lighthouse, not swayed by the waves, not shaken by the storm, because he knows the storm is not personal, the insult is not permanent, the pain is not pointless. Everything is fuel, if you know how to use it. But to use it, you must first not be used by it. The mind is a weapon or a weakness. It depends on who's holding it. Train your mind, and no one can use it against you. Let others react. You respond. Let others crave. You observe. Let others spiral. You remain. Let others fight shadows. You walk through fire, awake, aware, and unburned. This is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." It's not just a quote, it's a blueprint. Every day, the world will offer you distractions, temptations, reasons to abandon your center.
But every day you also get to decide, will I drift or will I anchor? The anchor is self-discipline. The anchor is pausing before speaking. The anchor is living by values, not emotions. The anchor is letting go of what you cannot control and mastering what you can. That's the habit. That's the practice. And when you train it, truly train it, you become immovable. Not because you are rigid, but because you are rooted. You are free, not because nothing touches you, but because nothing owns you. You are powerful, not because you dominate others, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. That's the Stoic way. That's the way of the disciplined mind. That's the way of the one no one can control because they have mastered the only thing that ever truly mattered.
Themselves. You want to know if you're growing? Don't look at your achievements. Look at your reactions. Are you calmer today than you were a year ago? Are you less triggered by foolishness, more patient in the face of ignorance, more focused in the midst of chaos? That's growth. That's the fruit of discipline. Not louder victories, but quieter battles won within. Because the real war is always inside, not out there. Inside. And no one escapes it. Not the kings of old, not the generals of today, not even Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome. In the quiet of night, he too wrestled with doubt, with fatigue, with the pool of ego. He bled like the rest of us, only silently. But he fought back, not with armies, with intention. He journaled to himself reminders of what mattered: justice, temperance, courage, wisdom. He didn't rely on motivation. He trained methodically. He used discipline as armor. That's why we remember him, not because he ruled others, but because he ruled himself. So ask yourself, are you ruling yourself? Are you holding the reins of your own mind, or are you a passenger yanked around by every mood, every opinion, every disappointment? When someone disrespects you, do you instinctively retaliate, or do you pause? When life gets hard, do you escape into distraction, or do you sit in the fire and let it temper you? These aren't small questions. They define the trajectory of your life, and they point you back to the one habit that makes all the difference: discipline of the mind. That doesn't mean suppressing your thoughts. It means filtering them. It means stepping back, watching them pass like clouds across the sky, choosing which ones deserve your attention, your energy, your belief. Because not every thought is truth, and not every emotion is a command. The disciplined mind knows this. The undisciplined mind obeys blindly. And the world? The world is full of the undisciplined. People who shout because they feel unheard, who spend because they feel empty, who chase because they feel small. But the Stoic, he is still. Not passive, but rooted. Not numb, but clear. Because clarity is what discipline gives you. It gives you the ability to see what matters and cut what doesn't. To delay gratification. To endure discomfort. To sacrifice short-term ease for long-term strength. And above all, to remain calm under pressure. Why? Because he's practiced for it. Discipline isn't something you summon in crisis. It's something you've trained for daily, in silence, when no one is watching. It's in the refusal to check your phone the moment you feel bored. It's in the decision to speak with kindness, even when anger surges. It's in the restraint to walk away from a fight your ego desperately wants to win. Every time you say no to what weakens you, you say yes to what builds you. And over time, those choices accumulate. They shape a person who is not reactive, but responsive, who is not fragile, but fortified, who doesn't need the world to be perfect in order to feel peace, because peace for him is not the absence of noise, it is the presence of discipline. So when you hear the voices of doubt, when old habits try to claw their way back, when the temptation to sink returns, pause and remember who you're becoming. Not someone who reacts, but someone who responds. Not someone who needs to win arguments, but someone who's already won the only argument that matters, the one between who they are and who they could be. And every time you choose the disciplined path, you close that gap, inch by inch, thought by thought, breath by breath. This is the work. This is the way. It's not flashy. It's not praised. No one will clap for you when you choose silence over drama. No one will cheer when you take the high road, when you walk away, when you master your temper. But you'll know. And that knowing, that quiet dignity, that's everything. Because when the storm hits, and it always does, it won't be your anger, your charm, or your followers that save you. It will be your discipline. It will be your clarity. It will be your calm. And in that moment, while others crumble, you will stand. Not because you're special, but because you're trained. Trained to think clearly. Trained to choose wisely. Trained to be unmoved in a world that never stops shaking. That is the power of mastering the mind. And once you have that, no one can control you. Not circumstances, not critics, not even your own past. Because you've built something stronger than all of them. You've built a self that stands on principle, not impulse. That acts from purpose, not panic. That lives from within, not in reaction to what's out there. That's the Stoic secret. That's the one habit that changes everything. And if you master it, truly master it, there is no man, no system, no insult, no failure, no betrayal that can take away your peace. Because your peace doesn't come from what you have. It comes from who you are. And that is fully in your control. Let's be clear about something. Your habits are not just actions. They are philosophies in motion. Every habit you build is a silent declaration of what you believe. You wake up early? You believe your time matters. You train your body? You believe in resilience. You stay calm when provoked. You believe in self-mastery. But if your habit is escapism, avoidance, indulgence, or complaint, then don't lie to yourself. You believe comfort matters more than greatness. You believe ease is better than evolution. Now ask yourself, without judgment, what have your habits been preaching? Because you can post quotes. You can nod at Stoic wisdom. You can read all the books. But your real philosophy is always revealed in your behavior, especially when no one is watching. And that's the secret Marcus Aurelius understood. He didn't write meditations to impress anyone. He wrote to survive himself, to face the chaos in his own mind, to silence the noise, to come back to what mattered over and over again. That's what journaling was for him. Not self-expression, but self-discipline. He knew You don't just decide to be disciplined, you train for it. Discipline is not one grand gesture, it's 1,000 small choices, 1,000 inner battles, 1,000 chances to say, I am not a slave to this world. I am not a slave to my impulses. I choose my response. Because there is no freedom without discipline. Let me say that again. There is no freedom without discipline. The man who cannot delay gratification is not free. The man who must respond to every insult is not free. The man who must always feel comfortable, always feel seen, always feel right, he is a prisoner. To emotion, to ego, to the illusion that peace can be found in controlling others instead of mastering oneself. And you? You've tasted enough suffering to know control is an illusion. You can't control what people say. You can't control who leaves. You can't control whether the world recognizes your efforts. But you can always control what happens in your mind. That's why this habit, mental discipline, is everything. Without it, your life is a storm. With it, your life becomes the eye of the storm. It doesn't mean chaos won't surround you. It means it won't enter you. That's the highest power a human being can possess. Not the power to dominate others, but the power to govern himself. And let's be honest, governing yourself is harder. It's easy to lose your temper, easy to vent, easy to blame. It's hard to stay calm when wronged, hard to keep showing up when it doesn't pay off, hard to choose integrity over ego. But that's why it's rare, and what is rare becomes valuable. That's why the disciplined man becomes a threat, because the world doesn't know what to do with someone it cannot provoke, someone who doesn't take the bait, someone who isn't looking to be saved, someone who isn't swayed by trends, who doesn't flinch when attacked or fold when ignored. That kind of man is dangerous, not to others, but to illusions. He shatters the game, because he's not in it. He's playing a different one, the inner game, the only game that matters. And that's the game Stoicism was built for. A philosophy not of words, but of weapons. Weapons of the mind, clarity, restraint, perspective, endurance. This is how you become unshakable, not by changing the world, but by changing how you face it. Not by avoiding pain, but by rising above it. And this is the truth no one wants to hear. The hard road is the free road. Because discipline feels like a prison until you realize it was the key all along. Once you stop being ruled by your lower nature, once you stop being reactive, needy, soft, and shaken by trivial things, once you stop needing comfort to feel okay, you become powerful. Not because you gained something external, but because you lost something internal. The fear of pain, the addiction to ease, the illusion of control. You no longer fear the fire because you've learned to walk through it. And not just walk through it, but to walk through it quietly. That is the essence of Stoicism. Not loud, not boastful, not even noticed by most, but undeniable. You walk differently when your mind is trained. Your eyes see further. Your heart breaks slower. Your words hit deeper. Your silence weighs more.
because people feel it when someone has wrestled with himself and won, when someone has faced chaos, disappointment, rejection, and chose not to flinch, not to chase, not to collapse.
That's not natural. It's not easy, but it is earned. And once you earn that peace, you will guard it with everything, because now you know what it took. Every early morning you didn't want to rise, every conversation you bit your tongue through, every temptation you ignored, every plan you stuck to when the whole world was indulging in distraction. All of it forged you. And now you stand not above others, but above your former self. And that is true victory. There will be days when you feel like you've made no progress. Days when old habits creep back in. Days when your temper flares, your discipline falters, and your mind runs wild. And in those moments, the weak man quits. He tells himself, "This isn't me. I failed. I'm not cut out for this." He goes back to comfort, back to distraction, back to the familiar misery he once called home. But the trained mind, the Stoic mind, does something else. It doesn't judge the fall, it observes it. It doesn't spiral, it learns. It remembers this too is practice. Falling off track doesn't mean you're broken, it means you're human. And if you meet that moment with awareness instead of shame, with courage instead of complaint, then even your failure becomes fuel. Because the disciplined man does not measure himself by perfection, he measures himself by return. How quickly can you come back to your principles? How often can you correct course, recenter, recalibrate? That's the true scoreboard. Not how few times you fall, but how fast you rise. This is the inner art of mental discipline, to return. To return to the present, to return to clarity, to return to purpose. Not once, but 1,000 times. Not perfectly, but persistently. That's what Marcus did. That's what Epictetus taught. That's what Seneca embodied. Not robotic coldness, not emotionless apathy, but anchored clarity. An ability to feel without being owned, to care without being controlled, to struggle without surrendering. The undisciplined mind is a slave to every impulse. It wants validation, and it chases it. It feels discomfort, and it escapes. It hears criticism, and it lashes out. The disciplined mind hears all those same things, but chooses its reaction. It doesn't obey every emotion. It doesn't need to be right, liked, or in control. It only needs to be aligned with reason, with truth, with virtue. And when your mind becomes like that, when your thoughts follow your will instead of your wounds, then no one can control you. Because nothing outside you has power over what is inside you. And that's the shift. That's the line most people never cross. They live their entire lives trying to fix the world, trying to rearrange other people, trying to escape discomfort, trying to be seen, loved, understood, obeyed, validated. But they never turn inward, never ask, what am I feeding my mind? What do I choose when no one's watching? What am I clinging to that makes me weak? So let me ask you right now, what part of you is still chained? Is it your fear of what people think? Is it the need for comfort? Is it the fantasy that someday everything will be perfect, so then you'll be at peace? Because here's the truth. Peace is not a place. Peace is not a reward. Peace is not something others give you. Peace is a decision. It is a practiced, deliberate, relentless decision to stop giving your power to the external and start sharpening your internal. It is a refusal to be manipulated by circumstances, by people, by fear. It is the quiet, daily choice to return to the present and master what you can control. Your thoughts, your responses, your habits, your attention. That is the battle. Not out there, in here. So what will you train today? Will you train your awareness or let your distractions run wild? Will you train your patience or sink into old comforts? The choice is not made once. It is made daily, hourly, moment to moment. And every time you choose discipline, you sharpen the blade. You become more solid, more focused, more dangerous to your former self. Because this is what the world cannot take from you. The strength you earn in silence. The mind you forged in the dark. The calm you built under pressure. The character you chose in secret. So don't look for applause. Look for alignment. Look for that feeling when you walk through a storm and your mind stays still. Look for that moment when temptation knocks and you smile, not because it's easy, but because you've trained for this. That's what makes you unshakable. Not your reputation, not your titles, not your status. Your habit of mastering the mind. Your refusal to let life decide who you are. And when you have that, when that habit becomes who you are, no one can control you, because you've already won the only war that matters. People wonder how the Stoics were so calm. How could Marcus Aurelius bear the betrayal of friends, the pressure of ruling an empire, the death of his children, yet remain composed? How could Epictetus, a man born a slave, beaten and mocked, say with confidence, "You may fetter my leg, but my mind, not even Zeus can overcome that"? It wasn't luck. It wasn't apathy. It wasn't superhuman strength. It was training. Not training of the body, but training of the will. Not strength of circumstance, but strength of perspective. You see, the greatest enemy you'll ever face is untrained thought. It is the voice that lies, the voice that panics, the voice that resists reality. The voice that believes its first reaction is the truth. That voice is not you. That voice is unexamined programming. And the moment you realize this, your power begins. Your real self is the one who can see the thought and decide, do I want to feed this? Do I want to believe this? Do I want to act from this? Because thoughts will come. You can't stop the storm, but you can stop obeying it. And that's what discipline does. It teaches you to respond, not react. To pause, to breathe, to challenge what feels urgent, to ask, is this who I want to be? Most people don't do this. Most people confuse momentum for truth. If the thought comes fast and loud, they assume it's real. But the Stoic trains himself to question speed. Is it urgent because it's true, or because I'm afraid? Is it urgent because it's necessary, or because I've been conditioned to crave comfort? Every emotion is a signal, but not every signal should be followed. Discipline gives you the space to choose, not to suppress emotion, but to witness it with clarity. Marcus Aurelius didn't say, don't feel. He said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That is the real power, not the absence of struggle, but the refusal to be enslaved by it. You see, the reason most people feel controlled by life isn't because life is hard. It's because they haven't trained their frame. The frame is how you interpret reality. Two men can face the same event. One breaks, the other grows. One complains, the other adapts. The event is the same, but their frames are not. The undisciplined man thinks, "This is unfair. Why me?" The disciplined man says, "This is training. Let me see what I'm made of." And that frame, that one habit of how you view what happens to you, will decide the quality of your entire life. So if you want peace, stop trying to change everything around you. Change your lens. Ask, what if this pain is my forge? What if this delay is my teacher? What if this obstacle is revealing my true capacity? That's not delusion. That's the highest form of discipline. To choose a powerful frame even when you don't feel powerful. To ask better questions even when life feels unfair. To look within even when the world tempts you to look outward and blame. And that's the paradox. When you stop needing control, you become uncontrollable. When you stop needing everything to go your way, nothing can shake your way. When you accept reality but master your response, you become untouchable. This is why the Stoics never chased control over others. They only chased mastery over the self. Because no one can steal the calm you built inside. Not critics, not loss, not betrayal, not even death, because those things live outside you, and what lives outside you can only touch the surface. But discipline sharpens what lives within. It is the root, the source, the well you return to. And once you cultivate that habit of inner mastery, you realize peace was never something you had to find. It was something you had to build, brick by brick, breath by breath, decision by decision, until one day you wake up and the noise doesn't own you. The past doesn't haunt you. The future doesn't scare you. And in that stillness, you realize you are finally free. Not because the world is perfect, but because you've trained your mind to be unshaken. If you can master one habit, no one, not circumstance, not people, not fear, will ever have power over you again. That habit is watching yourself. Not in judgment, but in awareness. Can you observe your thoughts without being swallowed by them? Can you watch your anger without becoming it? Can you feel doubt rise and still choose courage? That's not natural. That's not easy, but it is possible. And it is the foundation of every Stoic victory. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." But bravery doesn't begin with the sword. It begins with the self. The man who knows his own impulses, his fears, his temptations, and refuses to obey them blindly is braver than any warrior on the battlefield. Because the war inside is the real war. And you are not the noise. You are the one who can hear it. That is the beginning of freedom. That is the moment you stop being a slave to reaction and start becoming a master of response. The weak man says, "I had no choice. That's just how I felt." The strong man says, "I felt it, yes, but I chose differently." And that choice, that's where greatness begins. You don't have to shout to be powerful. You don't have to dominate others to be in control. You don't have to win arguments to win your mind. You simply have to see clearly, choose deliberately, and act according to principle, not emotion. That's the Stoic path. And it's not a one-time decision. It's not something you master and walk away from. It's daily, hourly, moment by moment. It's the quiet resistance to every urge that would make you small. It's the subtle redirection every time you want to blame. It's the calm breath you take when the world tries to rush you.
Discipline is not intensity. It's consistency. Anyone can meditate once. Anyone can pause once. Anyone can act calmly once. But who can do it again and again and again? When they're tired, when they're doubted, when they feel empty. That's where most people break. But the Stoic, he is forged in those very flames. He knows the harder the moment, the greater the opportunity to train. He doesn't see resistance as an inconvenience. He sees it as a mirror, showing him where he still has work to do, where his ego still clings, where his pride still whispers. And instead of defending weakness, he says, "Thank you." Because every hard moment is feedback, and feedback is fuel. He isn't trying to avoid hardship. He's learning to walk through it with wisdom. And what you'll notice over time is this: the world won't get easier, but you will get clearer. Clearer on what you value. Clearer on what you refuse to chase. Clearer on what kind of man or woman you are becoming. And when that clarity is strong, manipulation doesn't work. Criticism doesn't bite. Panic doesn't spread. Why? Because you know yourself. And when you know yourself, really know, you don't need approval. You don't need applause. You don't need anything outside to justify what you are building inside. That is real power. That is the habit that makes you untouchable. To hold your center when the world spins, to protect your principles when comfort calls, to watch yourself with honesty and adjust without shame. Because this is not about perfection, it's about persistence. Every moment you return to awareness, you deepen your mastery. And eventually, your mind stops being your enemy. It becomes your ally, your compass, your sword and your shield. And with it, you don't just survive the storm. You walk through it, unchanged. You do not need the world to be calm. You need you to be calm. You do not need people to stop provoking you. You need to stop being provoked. You do not need certainty. You need character. That is the Stoic promise. Not peace through the world, but peace through discipline. Not safety through control, but strength through surrender to reason. And that all begins with a single practice, a single habit, to watch yourself without flinching, to observe the movements of your own soul, to measure every reaction by the light of your principles, and to act not from fear, not from ego, not from appetite, but from the deepest part of you that is untouched by circumstance. Marcus Aurelius wrote,
Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. What kind of mind can do that? A trained one, a quiet one, a mind that has returned again and again to itself and refuses to be owned by anything external. Because he who is owned by his anger is not free. He who is swayed by every compliment or insult is not sovereign. He who lives at the mercy of moods is not alive. He's reacting. But you are more than a bundle of reflexes. You are a rational being, and reason is your gift. Reason is your inheritance. Reason is your sword. Use it. Use it to cut through illusion. Use it to pierce the fog of emotion. Use it to hold yourself when the tides rise, when the crowds cheer, when the critics hiss, when the mind screams, react. Do not obey that voice. Watch it, understand it, and gently return to yourself. That is mastery. Not in conquering others, but in conquering your own response to them. This habit, this one simple, invisible, unshakable practice is the root of all Stoic strength. The habit of watching yourself. It is not glamorous. It is not dramatic. It is not praised. But it is everything. It is what lets you see clearly when others panic. It is what lets you speak quietly when others shout. It is what lets you walk away when others cling. It is what lets you endure without breaking, without bitterness, without needing the world to understand. Because the world may never understand, but you will. You will know exactly who you are. Exactly what you stand for, exactly what you refuse to surrender. And in that clarity, there is peace, there is power, there is purpose. The world can try to control your name, your work, your image, your reputation, but if you master this one habit, it will never control your mind. And if the world cannot control your mind, then it cannot control you. You are free. And freedom is the foundation of virtue. Freedom to choose. Freedom to say no. Freedom to delay gratification. Freedom to walk alone. Freedom to endure criticism. Freedom to live by a higher law. This is what the Stoics meant by mastery. Not perfection, not sainthood, but unwavering commitment to what is right, even when it is inconvenient, even when it is painful, even when no one applauds. This path will not be easy, but it will be worth it. Because what you gain is not comfort. What you gain is character. And no one can take that from you. So hold your gaze, still your breath, watch your thoughts, and walk on. We are not here to be ruled by anything less than reason. We are here to rise.